Welcome back to ABCGH Spoilers channel. Today we will learn about the intriguing situation surrounding one of General Hospital's most complex characters, Valentin Cassadine, and the speculation about his future on the show. The writer's options for Valentin's character. The creative team behind General Hospital has several potential directions for Valentin's storyline. Given his history of deception, faking his death remains a viable option that would align with his character's past actions. Valentin has previously orchestrated his own demise to escape dangerous situations, and current circumstances might necessitate a similar strategy. This narrative approach would allow Valentin to disappear from Port Charles while being presumed dead, creating dramatic tension while accommodating actor Stuart Damon's scheduling needs. Such a temporary exit could be justified as a necessary measure for Valentin to protect himself from Jack Brennan's persistent threats. The writers have demonstrated considerable flexibility in working with Stuart's availability, potentially enabling him to make occasional appearances until he has sufficient time for a more substantial storyline. This arrangement has proven successful in the past, maintaining character continuity while respecting the actor's other professional commitments. The question of Valentin's eventual return opens fascinating narrative possibilities. Would he come back to Port Charles seeking reconciliation with Anna? Could Charlotte Cassadine overcome her reservations and accept a relationship between her father and Anna? These emotional complexities would provide rich material for future storylines, especially considering the deep connections Valentin has formed throughout his time in Port Charles. Valentin's complicated relationships. Valentin's connections to key Port Charles figures like Anna Devane and Laura Collins could prove crucial to his survival. These relationships might motivate Jason and Sonny to assist him despite their current animosity. Anna recently attempted to convince Valentin to surrender himself, demonstrating her continued concern for his welfare despite their complicated history. When Jack followed Valentin to the pier with lethal intentions, it was Anna who intervened, preventing what could have been a fatal confrontation. The intricate web of relationships extends beyond Anna to include Laura Collins, whose influence in Port Charles could provide Valentin with additional protection. These established connections create narrative possibilities for alliances that could help Valentin navigate his current predicament, potentially leading to unexpected collaborations among characters with historically adversarial relationships. Meanwhile, the situation with Jocelyn Jacks adds another layer of complexity. Jack has coerced Jocelyn into joining the WSB, creating leverage he can use to manipulate Carly. This development introduces a dangerous dynamic where Jack can essentially force Carly's compliance by threatening to expose or endanger her daughter. This subplot intertwines with Valentin's story, as both characters find themselves entangled in Jack Brennan's machinations. The Brennan conflict and Sonny's involvement. The conflict with Jack Brennan has placed Valentin at the center of a dangerous power struggle. Jack's attempted assassination of Valentin at the pier was only thwarted by Anna's timely intervention. This ongoing threat has forced Valentin into increasingly desperate measures, including his agreement to divulge Jack's secrets to Sonny Corinthos. Sonny's involvement stems from his disapproval of Carly's relationship with Jack, a sentiment reinforced by Jason's ultimatum that the relationship must end. However, none of them are aware of Jack's leverage over Carly through Jocelyn's forced WSB recruitment. This information asymmetry creates a volatile situation where multiple characters are making decisions based on incomplete understanding of Jack's true capabilities and intentions. Valentin's promise to reveal Jack's secrets to Sonny represents a high-stakes gambit that could either secure him powerful allies or further endanger his position. The revelation of these secrets could dramatically shift the balance of power in Port Charles, potentially triggering a chain reaction affecting numerous character relationships and storylines. The poisoned champagne incident. Valentin's recent actions have significantly complicated his situation in Port Charles. His retaliation for the threat to his daughter involved poisoned champagne intended for Jack Brennan. However, this plan went disastrously awry when the lethal beverage found its way to Carly Spencer instead. This miscalculation has placed Valentin squarely in the crosshairs of both Sonny Corinthos and Jason Morgan, two of Port Charles's most dangerous residents. Jason has already confronted Valentin to determine whether Carly was deliberately targeted, a conversation that likely involved implied threats rather than cordial discussion. The poisoned champagne incident represents a critical miscalculation on Valentin's part, transforming what was intended as a targeted act of revenge into a broader conflict that has drawn in Port Charles's most powerful figures. This escalation demonstrates how Valentin's protective instincts toward his daughter have led him to actions with unintended consequences, endangering not only his enemies but also innocent bystanders. The incident highlights the volatile nature of Valentin's current position, where even his calculated moves can spiral beyond his control. Valentin's history and fan support. Since his introduction to General Hospital in 2016, Valentin Cassadine has evolved into a fan-favorite character. Stuart Damon has portrayed the role consistently since Valentin's first appearance, developing a character with remarkable depth and complexity. The character had actually been conceptualized years before his on-screen debut, allowing the writers to craft a rich backstory that informed his initial characterization. Valentin's December return featured him immediately thrust into life-threatening situations, with multiple attempts on his life. This dangerous reintroduction has sparked concern among the show's dedicated viewers that the character might be written off permanently. As one of the few remaining Cassadines, Valentin represents an important connection to one of the show's most iconic families, making his potential departure particularly significant for longtime fans. The strong viewer attachment to Valentin demonstrates the character's successful integration into the General Hospital canvas. Fans have expressed their desire for Valentin to remain in Port Charles, appreciating both the character's complexity and Stuart Damon's nuanced portrayal. This audience investment provides the writers with compelling reasons to find creative solutions that keep Valentin in the narrative, even if his presence must be intermittent due to practical considerations. The current storyline has positioned Valentin at a fascinating crossroads, with multiple threats converging on him simultaneously. Whether he survives through cunning, assistance from unexpected allies, or another carefully orchestrated disappearance, Valentin's journey continues to captivate the General Hospital audience, who remain hopeful that this beloved Cassadine will find a way to endure. Next, we will learn about the intricate web of deception surrounding Sasha Corbin's pregnancy and the complex dynamics between the Quartermain and Scorpio families as they navigate this delicate situation. The truth about paternity and its consequences. The tangled situation involving Sasha's baby deserves a deeper examination, particularly considering how it affects all parties involved. Michael Corinthos, the biological father of Sasha's unborn child, finds himself in an extraordinarily precarious position. While he has expressed a genuine desire to actively participate in his child's life, a commendable paternal instinct that speaks to his character development over the years, he remains acutely aware of the complications his ongoing relationship with Willow introduces to this already volatile situation. The custody battle with Willow has created a pressure cooker environment where every decision carries potentially devastating consequences. Looking at the situation objectively, it seems increasingly probable that Michael will eventually step forward to acknowledge his paternity rather than allowing Jason and Sasha to perpetuate their elaborate charade indefinitely. The emotional and psychological toll of maintaining such a significant deception would inevitably create fractures in their relationships, potentially causing irreparable damage to the trust between family members. Furthermore, the ethical implications of denying a child knowledge of their biological parentage raise serious concerns about the long-term consequences of this decision. It's worth noting that Michael's custody battle with Willow might not be as severely compromised by the revelation of Sasha's pregnancy as he initially feared. After all, the chronology of events clearly establishes that Willow's infidelity with Drew preceded any involvement between Michael and Sasha. Her subsequent behavior following that betrayal, particularly her increasingly erratic decision-making under Drew's influence, raises legitimate questions about her current emotional stability and, by extension, her capacity for sound parental judgment during this turbulent period. The potential for Jason and Sasha to become so deeply entangled in their fabrication that they pursue a counterfeit romantic relationship or even a marriage of convenience represents a particularly troubling possibility. Such an arrangement would deprive both of them of the opportunity to develop authentic romantic connections based on genuine emotional attachment rather than necessity. More significantly, it would deprive Sasha's child of a fundamental right, knowing and developing a relationship with their biological father during those crucial formative years. Michael's custody battle complications. The custody dispute between Michael and Willow has escalated dramatically in recent weeks, creating a powder keg situation that threatens to explode with the slightest provocation. Drew Quartermain's growing influence over Willow's decision-making process has introduced an unpredictable element to an already volatile situation. His counsel, while perhaps well-intentioned, appears to be pushing Willow toward increasingly confrontational strategies that may ultimately prove counterproductive to achieving an amicable resolution. Despite these mounting pressures, Michael may eventually reach the conclusion that acknowledging paternity of Sasha's child won't necessarily undermine his position in the custody case as severely as he initially feared. The timeline of events provides him with a compelling narrative. Willow's affair with Drew represented the initial breach of trust in their relationship, occurring well before any involvement between Michael and Sasha. This chronology establishes a clear sequence of cause and effect that any reasonable family court judge would take into consideration. Moreover, Willow's recent behavior raises legitimate concerns about her current emotional state and decision-making capacity. Her increasingly erratic actions, potentially influenced by Drew's involvement, could be interpreted as signs of instability during a critical period when demonstrating sound judgment is paramount. In contrast, Michael's willingness to eventually acknowledge his responsibilities towards Sasha's child could be framed as evidence of his maturity and commitment to fulfilling his parental obligations, regardless of the personal complications involved. The custody battle has already taken a significant emotional toll on all parties involved, particularly the children caught in the middle of this adult conflict. The introduction of another child into this already complex family dynamic will inevitably require thoughtful consideration and delicate handling to minimize additional trauma. Michael's approach to integrating this new reality into his existing family structure will be closely scrutinized, both by the court and by those in his immediate circle. The historical pattern of paternity deception. The current situation involving Jason, Sasha, and Michael exists within a broader historical context of paternity deception within Port Charles's prominent families. This pattern of misattributed parentage has become almost a tradition among certain family lines, creating a complex web of biological and social relationships that often diverge significantly from one another. Years ago, Ned Quartermain assumed the role of father to Christina Corinthos Davis, establishing a precedent for this type of paternal substitution within the Quartermain family. Similarly, he later adopted Leo Quartermain, who was biologically a Jerome, specifically, a half-brother of Lucas Jones through their shared father, Julian Jerome, who was also the father of the late Sam McCall. These complicated family connections illustrate how fluid the concept of fatherhood has become within these interconnected family trees. Perhaps most relevant to the current situation is Jason's historical role in Michael's early life. Jason once claimed paternity of Michael when A.J. Quartermain was actually the biological father, creating a situation remarkably parallel to the current arrangement with Sasha's baby. This historical precedent may explain why few people in Port Charles expressed surprise when Jason stepped forward as the purported father of Sasha's child. They've witnessed this pattern before and recognize it as consistent with Jason's character and past behavior. Carly Spencer, with her intimate knowledge of Jason's history and character, almost certainly suspects that Jason is once again assuming paternal responsibility for a child that isn't biologically his. Her unique perspective, informed by her own experience with Jason stepping up for her in the past, gives her special insight into the current situation that others might lack. This awareness creates an additional layer of complexity, as Carly's knowledge could either provide valuable support for maintaining the deception or become a liability if she decides the truth should come to light. These historical patterns of paternity deception within Port Charles's prominent families have created a cultural environment where such arrangements, while not necessarily approved of, are at least understood as part of the complex social fabric of the community. This context helps explain why the current deception has been accepted with relatively little scrutiny, despite the somewhat implausible nature of a romantic connection between Jason and Sasha. The challenges of maintaining the deception. The elaborate charade orchestrated by Jason, Sasha, and Michael faces mounting challenges that threaten to unravel their carefully constructed narrative. As Sasha's pregnancy progresses, the practical demands of maintaining this deception will only increase, requiring ever more complex arrangements and potentially forcing the participants into increasingly uncomfortable situations. The deception appears increasingly untenable as time passes, raising serious questions about how far Jason and Sasha are willing to go to protect Michael's interests. Will they eventually feel compelled to fabricate a genuine romantic relationship to deflect suspicion? Might they even consider marriage as a means of solidifying their story and providing a more stable appearance for the benefit of observers? Such extreme measures would represent a significant sacrifice of their personal happiness and future opportunities for authentic connection, all in service of a deception that may ultimately prove impossible to maintain indefinitely. The emotional and psychological toll of sustaining such a significant lie would inevitably create strain in their relationships, both with each other and with those around them. Constant vigilance against accidental slips or inconsistencies would introduce a persistent undercurrent of anxiety into their daily interactions. The stress of perpetually performing for an audience of family and friends would likely take a substantial toll on their mental well-being over time. Moreover, the practical logistics of Jason assuming a paternal role after the child's birth present numerous complications. Will he be present in the delivery room instead of Michael when Sasha gives birth? Will he participate in decorating the nursery and supporting Sasha during her postpartum recovery? Will he assume the day-to-day responsibilities of infant care, creating bonds with a child he knows isn't biologically his? Each of these scenarios presents both practical challenges and emotional complications that could prove increasingly difficult to navigate as time passes. Perhaps most significantly, this arrangement would place Jason in the emotionally fraught position of once again raising a child that isn't biologically his, a situation that would inevitably evoke powerful memories of his relationship with Michael. This parallel could prove particularly painful for Jason, potentially reopening old emotional wounds while simultaneously creating new ones as he forms attachments to a child he knows will eventually learn the truth about their parentage. The emotional impact on Jason and Sasha. The arrangement between Jason and Sasha extends far beyond a simple verbal agreement. It represents a profound emotional commitment with far-reaching implications for both parties. For Jason, assuming the role of father to Sasha's child would inevitably evoke powerful memories of his relationship with Michael, whom he practically raised despite not being his biological father. This parallel creates a complex emotional landscape for Jason to navigate, potentially reopening old wounds while simultaneously creating new attachments that he knows may eventually be severed. The emotional burden on Jason is particularly significant given his history. Having experienced the profound bond that can develop between a father figure and a child regardless of biological connection, he understands better than most the emotional investment required for this role. His willingness to step into this position again speaks volumes about his loyalty to Michael and his compassion for Sasha's situation, but it also places him in a vulnerable position where he may once again form deep attachments to a child who will eventually learn that he is not their biological father. For Sasha, the arrangement represents a significant deviation from her original plan to raise the child independently, possibly away from Port Charles. Her initial strategy might have allowed her greater autonomy and simplified the complex web of relationships now surrounding her pregnancy. However, circumstances have forced her to adapt, creating a situation where she must now navigate the involvement of multiple family members with competing interests and agendas. The presence of Jason in her life during this vulnerable period creates a complicated dynamic. While this support undoubtedly provides practical assistance and a buffer against unwanted scrutiny, it also introduces an element of artifice into what should be one of the most authentic experiences of her life. The necessity of maintaining their facade during intimate moments like doctor's appointments, birthing classes, and eventually the birth itself requires a performance that may detract from Sasha's ability to fully experience and process these significant life events on her own terms.